Welcome to another chilling true crime story. Today, we're diving into the dark world of medical malpractice, a place where trust is shattered and lives are forever altered. This is the story of Dr. Victor Harrington, a once respected physician whose name would eventually become synonymous with horror. His patients came to him for help, but instead, they became subjects in a series of unethical and disturbing experiments. Dr. Harrington's case highlights the terrifying consequences of unchecked power in the medical field. With a charming demeanor and a spotless record, he convinced his patients to trust him. But behind closed doors, he was carrying out experiments that would make even seasoned medical professionals recoil in horror. And the most unsettling part? He almost got away with it. How did a doctor sworn to save lives end up destroying them instead? And why did it take so long for anyone to stop him? Let's uncover the shocking truth. Dr. Victor Harrington was born in 1958 in a small town in Illinois. The son of a respected physician and a dedicated nurse, he grew up surrounded by the world of medicine. From an early age, he displayed an insatiable curiosity about how the human body worked. He was a bright and ambitious student, excelling in school and earning a scholarship to a prestigious medical university. During his university years, he quickly gained a reputation for his intellect and determination. He was particularly drawn to experimental medicine and neurology, fascinated by the idea of altering brain function to treat diseases. His professors praised his ingenuity, but some also noted his willingness to push ethical boundaries in pursuit of his research. He graduated with honors and wasted no time climbing the ranks in the medical field. His colleagues described him as intelligent and charismatic, with an unshakable confidence that made patients feel at ease. He could walk into a room and immediately command respect. But behind that friendly facade was a man obsessed with pushing the boundaries of medical science, no matter the cost. Those who knew him well would later recall moments where his obsession with groundbreaking discoveries seemed to eclipse his concern for ethical practices. By the early 1990s, Dr. Harrington had secured a position at Crestview Medical Center, a private hospital known for cutting-edge treatments. It was there that he began working closely with Dr. Susan Caldwell, a respected researcher specializing in neurodegenerative diseases. Dr. Caldwell initially admired Harrington's brilliance, believing that together they could develop revolutionary treatments. She would later become one of the key whistleblowers in his case. At first, Dr. Harrington's work seemed groundbreaking. He proposed experimental treatments for neurological disorders, claiming they could revolutionize modern medicine. His research focused on manipulating neural pathways through a combination of electrical stimulation and pharmaceutical compounds. He presented his ideas at medical conferences, dazzling audiences with his vision of a future where conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's could be reversed. But soon, troubling signs began to emerge. Some of his patients, who had initially shown promise under his treatments, began experiencing unexplained side effects, severe headaches, memory loss, and in some cases, complete cognitive impairment. Hospital staff noticed an unusual number of deaths under his care, but none of these incidents were formally investigated at the time. What no one knew was that Dr. Harrington had begun conducting unauthorized experiments on his patients, without their consent. He carefully selected those he deemed suitable candidates, often choosing individuals who were vulnerable, such as elderly patients with no immediate family or those suffering from conditions with no known cure. He falsified medical records to cover his tracks, ensuring that any complications were attributed to pre-existing conditions rather than his experimental procedures. By the late 1990s, murmurs of concern began circulating within Crestview Medical Center. Dr. Caldwell, who had once admired Harrington's work, started noticing disturbing patterns in his research. Patients who had initially been admitted for routine treatments were subjected to unapproved drug regimens. Some experienced inexplicable behavioral changes, becoming unresponsive or displaying erratic emotions. The more she looked into his records, the more discrepancies she found. When she confronted him, he brushed off her concerns, claiming that all medical breakthroughs required risks. "You can't change the world without breaking a few rules," he allegedly told her. But Dr. Caldwell wasn't convinced. Determined to uncover the truth, she began secretly documenting everything she found: patient files, research notes, and internal communications that suggested a deliberate cover-up. As the years passed, the situation escalated. The more Dr. Harrington experimented, the bolder he became. Some of his test subjects were subjected to prolonged electrical stimulation sessions, leaving them in a near-catatonic state. Others were unknowingly injected with chemical compounds that altered their brain chemistry, causing irreversible damage. Yet, despite growing concerns, no formal complaints were filed, either due to fear or lack of concrete evidence. By the early 2000s, as evidence mounted, it became clear that Dr. Harrington was not just an overzealous scientist. He was a man willing to sacrifice lives for the sake of his research. The disturbing truth was finally beginning to emerge. Dr. Harrington's experiments were centered on altering brain function through electrical stimulation and unapproved drug combinations. He believed that by rewiring the brain, he could enhance memory, eliminate pain, and even alter human emotions. His test subjects? Patients who trusted him with their lives. One of his victims, Michael Reynolds, had sought treatment for chronic migraines. Instead of receiving standard care, he was secretly given high doses of an experimental drug that left him in a near-catatonic state for weeks. Another patient, Karen Ellis, came in for minor neurological issues and was subjected to invasive procedures that caused permanent cognitive impairment. Even the hospital staff started noticing inconsistencies in patient records. Dr. Caldwell, once his closest ally, became increasingly suspicious. She noticed that several patients under Dr. Harrington's care were experiencing unusual complications, yet there were no official reports documenting the cause. When she confronted him, he dismissed her concerns, insisting that he was making groundbreaking discoveries. But Dr. Caldwell wasn't convinced. She began documenting her findings and secretly gathering evidence. It wasn't until David Mitchell, a journalist investigating medical malpractice cases, received an anonymous tip from Dr. Caldwell that things started to unravel. Mitchell began digging into Dr. Harrington's patient records and found alarming patterns. Patients who should have recovered were left permanently disabled, and in some cases, even died under mysterious circumstances. Working together, Dr. Caldwell and Mitchell collected enough evidence to present their findings to the authorities. In 2003, law enforcement and medical boards launched an official investigation into Dr. Harrington's practices at Crestview Medical Center. In 2005, Dr. Victor Harrington was arrested and charged with multiple counts of medical malpractice, criminal negligence, and unethical human experimentation. His defense team, led by attorney Richard Langley, argued that he had only been trying to advance medical science, and that his experiments had the potential to revolutionize medicine. But the testimonies from victims and whistleblowers painted a different picture. Michael Reynolds, now unable to work due to his neurological damage, gave a harrowing testimony about his experience. Karen Ellis's family spoke about how she had become a shell of her former self. Dr. Caldwell detailed the internal cover-ups and Harrington's refusal to acknowledge the harm he had caused. Despite overwhelming evidence, the trial took an unexpected turn. Due to legal loopholes and bureaucratic red tape, some of the most damning evidence was deemed inadmissible. In a shocking verdict, Dr. Harrington was sentenced to only 5 years in prison and was released early on parole. The public was outraged. Medical boards were forced to reevaluate ethical guidelines and tighten regulations to prevent similar cases from happening again. But for the victims, justice remained elusive. Dr. Victor Harrington's case serves as a grim reminder of the power that medical professionals hold over their patients and the devastating consequences when that power is abused. While some safeguards have been put in place since his conviction, the question remains: how many other doctors might be conducting unethical experiments right now, hidden behind the walls of prestigious institutions? What do you think? Was justice truly served in this case? And how can we ensure that such horrors never happen again? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more chilling true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.